Hey yo, what up? You can see me? I'm being obscured by my own graphic. Maybe this movie screen wasn't a great idea after all. In any event, hey guys, welcome to FanCasting. This is a new series of videos I'm going to do where I basically cast my favorite movies. This particular one's going to be something that I actually threw up on my blog late last year or early this year. It was a while ago. In any event, it's basically my take on how I'd like to do the Fantastic Four. So for those that might be too young to remember, uh, Wizard Magazine, when it was in its old stone tablet form, used to have a special feature called Casting Call. And I think this is the article that really popularized the concept of fan casting. And they had some pretty good predictions, actually. A couple of times they actually guessed an actor who would later go on to play the actual character in the movie. Like they guessed they had fan casted Patrick Stewart as Professor Xavier years before the movie actually went into production. So that's basically what I'm going to do here. And this movie that we're going to be doing today, well, yeah, we know this one didn't turn out as well as people were hoping. The Josh Trank Fantastic Four reboot. Personally, you can read my review, or my perspective on the matter in another video that I have on my channel. You'll find out there that I didn't really have that big of an issue with it, but I could tell that it had enough problems, even if people had gone to see it, to where it wasn't strong enough to carry its own franchise, which is unfortunate. I feel bad for the people involved. Of course, we all remember the previous incarnation. For most of us, this is the first time we ever saw the Fantastic Four on film. This was Jessica Alba, Michael Chiklis, a guy who would later go on to play Captain America, and I forget actually plays Reed in this film. I liked these movies. My issue with these movies was not the movies themselves or the stories, but it was the poor interpretation of villains. They just didn't get Doom right, and they definitely got Galactus all wrong, which is crazy because they nailed Silver Surfer. But there were plenty of obvious reasons why this particular franchise couldn't continue. Now, most people might have forgot that that was actually a reboot of sorts of this old Corman film from years ago that never saw the light of day. Well, at least not in cinemas. Geeks all over the country picked up bootleg copies from comic book shops and comic conventions just to laugh at it. And if you thought the Josh Trank reboot was bad, early CGI Johnny Storm, animatronic. Actually, the animatronic thing ain't that all bad. But yeah, it's corny as corn can corn. Oh yeah, actually, this is purportedly the trailer to the original Fantastic Four film. Let's take a look.
It's problem time. Not for sale at any price. Such things as dreams are made on.
So yeah, I've actually seen this original movie. Purportedly, this is the original trailer for the Fantastic Four movie. I actually haven't been able to independently verify that. Probably is. Um, this I have seen this movie. It's been a few years. I actually picked up one of those bootleg copies on VHS way back in the day, and still have it. And yeah, it's pretty awful. I'm not sure why in the trailer they use the music from the original Battlestar Galactica, but they do. And I think this movie just goes to show that just because something is a faithful interpretation of a comic book doesn't mean that it's a good interpretation of a comic book. It's just it's just not good in any way, shape, or form. Although they did a pretty decent job on the Thing, actually. It's about the only thing they did well. Doom is just, yeah. Well, Mole Man. I actually don't remember him in the movie. It's weird. So yeah, that was a thing that happened in the 90s. 90s was a weird time. Even the poster makes no sense. Part muscle, part elastic, part fire, part invisible. Together, it's nonsensical. So basically, here's my my idea to bring the Fantastic Four into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think one of the first things that we could do is I kind of want to take a Captain America style approach to the Fantastic Four. Where have they been all this time? Well, I'd actually like to set the Fantastic Four initially in the 1960s, much the way they were originally portrayed in the comic book when they made their first appearance, and have them battle threats that are kind of reminiscent of stuff that used to happen in the 1960s, giant monsters and things of that nature. And set the characters in the 1960s early on in the film, but set it up to where apparently something has happened to them where they've disappeared. And they've been missing from the Marvel Cinematic Universe for a number of decades. And you don't have to do this exactly like they did Captain America, where the bulk of the film takes place in the 1960s and then they end it with a big Nick Fury reveal. Actually, you could open the movie early with the characters coming from wherever it is they were, space or alternate dimensions, or however this Fantastic Four is interpreted. I'm kind of a fan of them getting their powers from an alternate dimension, especially since the Marvel Cinematic Universe is getting ready to introduce the concepts of alternate dimensions with Stephen Strange, likely with Iron Fist, and possibly even with Guardians of the Galaxy. Bring that whole cosmic aspect in, and you can have them come back for any number of reasons. And yeah, also I want to see a giant monster in the movie, done well. Here's my picks for the individual actors to play the Fantastic Four. So yeah, I'm actually a fan of Chris Pine. Believe it or not, I'm one of those guys that likes the new Star Trek. Go fig. And yes, I have been a fan of Star Trek since the first time I saw Star Trek in the 1980s. Yeah, I go that far back. I go back to when the only Star Trek that you could watch was the original Star Trek, and I've seen every movie, TV show, sometimes even multiple times. I've seen them all since. I've seen almost all the fan films and fan series. But I actually like Chris Pine. And my issue with some of the reads that we've had so far is that all of them are kind of young. Maybe less so with the previous incarnation of Fantastic Four, but I like the idea that Chris Pine could probably carry off being unintelligent, but with a little bit more maturity than previous characters have portrayed him. Really not a lot to say there about the guy. I like the actor, and I think the key to making Reed an interesting character is really the storytelling, the writing, making sure that you include his intellect and sometimes his absent-mindedness and his obsessiveness. I think Pine can probably do that just fine. Now, this next one is probably going to piss a lot of people off. Good. I became an instant fan of Boyega the moment I saw him. The moment I was halfway through The Force Awakens, I absolutely loved his character in that movie. Finn could have come off as being could have come off as the most annoying, most dislikable character they possibly could have come up with. I mean, for a guy who spent half the movie saying he wanted to run away, for a guy who was scared half the time, for a guy who was not really very trusting of people, for a guy who basically turned and ran the entire film until the very end, Boyega managed to pull that off and still make him likable. He was still a fun character to watch. He wasn't insufferable or annoying. And I'll admit, there's not much you can watch with Boyega. I believe his other film is Attack the Block. I still haven't seen that. So I'm just going by that one appearance, but there was enough substance there to where I think he can pull the character off pretty well. And now this one might get you. Sue Storm. So I'm not one of those people that think that just because you cast a black guy means that everybody in the family has to also be black. I'm in a mixed relationship. My wife is black. My daughter is obviously mixed. I've known a lot of mixed families. I have a lot of mixed friends, relatives. It's not an unusual thing. I've lived on both sides of the millennium, and it's just not a thing that really bothers me. I know it's an issue for some people, and I don't think those people matter. Not in this day and age. But with that said, I also don't think it has to be one way or the other. I just like Kerry Washington. When I was originally doing this list, I had gone through a whole list of other actresses, and I was actually having trouble with her. I think I was somewhere between Jolene Blalock and, forgive me if I forget her name, the actress from the Stephen King series on the Sci-Fi Channel. What is that called? Haven. Slipped my mind for a second. Both great actresses, but again, I was kind of doing that fan thing where I had cast somebody who looks exactly like the comic book character rather than cast somebody based on who would make that character interesting. And I like Kerry Washington. I started watching Scandal way back in the day, way before it became supposedly synonymous with something that women, but particularly black women, enjoy watching. I started watching it before my wife started watching it, and she looked over my shoulder one day and just got super interested in the show. I mean, I know Kerry Washington has the range to pull off complex matriarchal type figure. In that show, she has to be tough as nails in her professional life, but her personal life is a disaster. It's just falling apart all around her, and I really like the way that she handles herself in those situations. She can do tough, she can do vulnerable, and that's really what you want out of any actor playing anybody. But Sue, especially, the one who kind of has to be the one that keeps the boys in line, man, I can't think of anybody better than Kerry Washington. And the reason she came to mind was because when I went through those lists of actresses, blonde white actresses that I was trying to pick to play Sue, after I wasn't especially happy with my choices, but I settled on one. When I got to the bottom of the list, I threw in Alicia Masters just for fun, and I was like, oh wait, I didn't remember that Kerry Washington played Alicia Masters. She's a fantastic actress. Why would you not pick her to play something great in this role? And I think it would be super awesome to cast her as a romantic foil for Reed, particularly, coming from an interracial relationship. I know how interesting that can be, especially from a storytelling perspective, especially if the story begins in the 1960s. Oh my gosh, that could create for all kinds of interesting conflict and conflict resolution and conflict from the outside world. I'm down with it. My choice for Ben Grimm. Yeah, this guy. Years ago, I have always tried to dislike this guy, and I always end up liking the roles he plays. He's not exactly, I don't think he's from New York, per se. But then again, neither was the previous actor who played Ben Grimm. But man, could he mocap the heck out of this guy? I don't really have much more to say than this. I think he would just. Ben's got to have personality to spare, and if his chemistry with John Boyega isn't magic to start with, man, I don't know what other kind of magic you create in the movie screen. I think this guy's got the chops to do it. Now here's where everything that can go wrong usually does go wrong. Dr. Doom. He's a tough character to come across. He's the greatest scientist in the world. He's the greatest magician in the world. Second only to Doctor Strange. I should say sorcerer in the Marvel cinematic in Marvel comics. I don't know exactly how they're going to do magic in the MCU. It's supposed to be like Thor's advanced science. So, but in any event, Doom is great at everything. Doom really never loses. He just kind of suffers setbacks. But he doesn't ever really fail. The handful of times that he does, it doesn't break him. You can't break Doom. And I think that I think that Joaquin Phoenix is just crazy enough. Just something wrong with him in the head enough to be able to pull this guy off. Can you imagine Joaquin Phoenix being method and playing Doom for like 6 months straight all the time? That alone would be enough for me to want to have Joaquin Phoenix play Doom. I think this would be a great interpretation, and one of the key things there is you'd have to be able to write some way for Doom to talk to himself without coming across as cheesy. I don't know what they'll do in the future when they try to do. They're inevitable. There's going to be a Fantastic Four reboot. Whatever they do, whatever they come up with, they're going to have to include this guy at some point. Particularly if they can't skip him. Particularly if they're trying to do a franchise, you have to have the Fantastic Four's main foil. But you got to get this guy right, and you got to really think about him and really do him to where he's close enough to the comic book character that fans recognize where the source material is coming from, but don't get too close to the source material to where you're just doing a cheesy, cliched supervillain. Not a lot of people include these in their fan castings, but I think director is kind of crucial. Director and producer is kind of crucial to making a successful film. And the guy who I would pick to do this would be somebody who basically did the Fantastic Four already, but in animated form, and that's Brad Bird over here on the right. This is John Lasseter, who's also a genius, storytelling genius, former head of Pixar, current head of Disney Imagineering. The reason that I think Brad Bird can do it is when you look at The Incredibles, probably going to do it again in Incredibles 2, Bird seemed to understand the superhero family dynamic. That's one of the most important aspects of the Fantastic Four, and it kind of got neglected in all previous interpretations of the film. If you don't, the Fantastic Four's shtick is not necessarily superpowers. You could say that with any superhero film, even the ones who don't have external powers and just fight with their cunnings and their wits. Captain America, his shtick is his earnestness. His shtick is his honesty. His shtick is the fact that he's a guy from a different time, forced to live in modern days, the Rip Van Winkle character. Iron Man's stick is that he's a technological genius who decided he wanted to save the world. But the Fantastic Four shtick is different from those characters, from other teams. Their thing is that they are a family. There's a reason that they're called Marvel's first family. And that's one of the most important storytelling aspects of these characters. You've got to make them feel like they love each other, that they would do anything for each other, that they would sacrifice for each other. If you can get that to come across in the film, that's where you'll create your tension and your true dynamics. That's what Incredibles did. You felt for everybody when somebody else was in a dire situation. When you thought that Mr. Fantastic was possibly going to be unfaithful to his wife, although obviously they weren't going to do that in the film, but you felt like he was cheating with her emotionally by flirting with this girl, and you felt bad for her, for Elastigirl. Did I call him Mr. Fantastic? Mr. Incredible. When you saw the kids in jeopardy, you felt for the parents, because you were like, if something bad happens to the kids, the mother and father are going to be devastated. And even the insufferable teenage girl, you ended up kind of liking her because her whole thing was comedy. And that's something that a director that does a Fantastic Four film needs to understand implicitly. You need to have those characters be unique from each other, individually be able to stand on their own in their own scenes, and then they all have to care about each other as if they were blood kin relative. And you have to reflect all the stuff that comes with being a family, the times where we can't stand each other, the times where we fight, the times where we come into conflict, and how that plays when all of our lives are suddenly in jeopardy. Well, gang, those are my picks for the Fantastic Four reboot. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I hope you'll stick around for future videos. You know, hit the subscribe so you can see it. I mean, I don't know why we tell you that. You guys, this isn't your first, I'm pretty sure this is not your first day on YouTube. You know how the subscribe button works. You know how the like button works. You're going to leave a comment. If you want to leave a comment, you're going to leave a comment. I can't make you do these things. It's not like me saying it changes anything. But subscribe, like, and comment, please. Also, stay tuned for future versions of these videos. I will give you a preview of the next video. As soon as I decide what it is, I will edit it into this clip. And here it is.
Tally ho! Wings of silver, birds of steel. Partly metal, partly real.
Alright guys, thanks for watching. This is Digital Jedi saying peace out. See you on the flip side.